All right. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. For those in your room, if you have not signed into the Zoom room, I recommend and ask that you do. We do have some online participants, and we hope that it helps with the facilitation and discussion between in-person and online participants as well. And if you're looking for the audio, it's on channel 1 of the headset. My name is Jim Prendergast. I'm with the Galway Strategy Group, and as I was preparing for this, I realized this is my 17th IGF, which is a little frightening but exciting because what we're going to talk about is one of those issues that wasn't around at the first one that I attended, but rapidly has appeared on the horizon as the IGFs have progressed. So the topic we're diving into today is not just timely, but it's absolutely critical. It's agentic AI and the need for responsible governance. We're witnessing a pivotal moment where AI is evolving beyond reactive tools to become proactive, autonomous agents capable of independent decision-making and action. This leap presents both incredible opportunities, but also some challenges that demand immediate and thoughtful attention, and that's what we want to do today. Our goal is to explore these new frontiers, understand the implications of this powerful technology, and sort of collaboratively work towards a future where agentic AI serves humanity responsibly and ethically. So let's get started. Where is my clicker? Maybe advance the slide if you can in the back. Could you grab that for me? There we go. Okay, back to the agenda if you would. Back one slide. All right, so just real briefly, I'll cover what we're going to do today. We've only have 60 minutes, so for what could possibly be a 3-hour discussion. So, and when I say discussion, I mean it. We want this to be as interactive as possible. We want to include everybody's comments, thoughts, questions, et cetera. So we're going to leave about half of our time for Q&A. What we're going to do is we're going to have some brief scene-setting remarks from our 4 fantastic panelists, touching on both understanding agentic AI and both the challenges and ethical considerations that come with the use of this technology. So let me introduce you to our panelists. On my left here in the room, we have Will Carter, who leads AI policy at Google, where he focuses on advancing AI innovation at Google and smart AI policy around the world. He made his way from his home in New Mexico in the United States. Joining us online is Luciana Benatti, who is the head of research in AI at, here goes my Spanish, Fundación Vía Libre. She innovates in participatory methods for AI evaluation in Latin America and is joining us from Argentina. Jayantha Fernando is a veteran technology and digital law expert and the head of technology, media, and telecom practice at Heritage Partners in Colombo, Sri Lanka. He's also a member of the Sri Lankan AI Task Force. He will be joining us in a few minutes, I believe, from Kuala Lumpur. Tracking him down is difficult, to say the least. He's always on the move. And then finally, to my right, we have Dominique Lazansky, who is an expert in standards development and negotiates for the UK government at the ITU. She's also a fellow at the University of Pittsburgh, working on tech policy, and is a consultant on a wide variety of tech projects globally, including in Ukraine. She splits her time between London and Lillehammer, just north of us here in Oslo. So to get us started, I'm going to ask Will and Dominique to sort of give us a brief intro into agentic AI, including the role that standards could play in responsible deployment. So Will, you want to get us going?
Thanks, Jim. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Jim gave me the unenviable job of trying to define agentic AI and set the stage for this conversation, which is probably one of the most fraught topics in AI policy at the moment. There is no consensus definition of what agentic AI is, and we're only beginning to see the capabilities of this technology emerge. And I think that a lot will transform over the next couple of years as more of these agentic AI solutions are rolled out around the world. And at the same time, we can identify certain attributes of agentic AI systems that are more unique, certain defining characteristics that differentiate agentic AI from previous generations of AI assistants. And really, I would point to 2. The first is the ability to do more complex reasoning within the model, and the ability to perform more complex tasks on behalf of the user. And really, those 2 key characteristics, the ability to reason about more complex topics and then take action, are what differentiate emerging agentic AI solutions from previous generations of AI capabilities. So what is this about? Why are we even doing this? Why are we pursuing these technologies? I think that, for us at Google, agents are the next step on our mission from our foundation to really organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful to people. You can think of agents as the next step along a journey that started with what we called PageRank, the original Google search. Over time, we introduced machine learning into search in order to better understand context and provide more relevant answers to user queries. We introduced models like BERT and MUM, early large language models that allowed us to process more complex queries and route users more efficiently to relevant results. And now we've introduced features like AI overviews, AI mode, the Gemini apps, which leverage really cutting-edge large language models in order to answer users' questions and direct them to actionable results. And agents are that next step, that are going to get our users to more relevant responses, more relevant results in fewer queries, and allow them to take action more efficiently. So it's really about, that next step in simplifying the user journey and really delivering better results for our users. And what does that look like ultimately? This is aspirational. It'll take years for this technology to get to this point, but we'd like to see a world in which AI agents can pick up a lot of the day-to-day mental load of our day-to-day tasks. So I'm a parent. I imagine most of the parents in the room would love if they had a virtual assistant that could manage pickups from after-school activities, meal plan for your family based on their eating preferences and needs, help to manage the family budget and, with your permission, pay your bills, and identify an SUV that can accommodate 3 car seats, but also fit into cramped urban parking spaces, and find it at a local dealership in your preferred color. All of these little things are things that I think that agentic AI will hopefully be able to take off our plates, allowing us to focus on more interesting and complex tasks and the things that are most important to us. So that's the positive vision, and really that's where we see this technology going. And I'll pass it over to Dominique to talk a little bit more about the implications.
Thank you. And actually, Will, you bring up the point that I think agentic AI started in the 90s with search and the human agents, right?
Yep, absolutely.
It's something that I was thinking about recently, so thanks for bringing that up. So I'm going to talk a little bit about standards, AI standards, because we've heard a lot about AI here, AI in governance, AI in regulation, AI, as an issue for WSIS. And I just want to talk about the sort of bedrock for all this work that Will's doing at Google, or indeed that we're experiencing when we actually are using it. And as Will said, because he keeps stealing my thunder, setting definitions and terms is really, really key. And there's been a lot of proposals in this area. And again, when I think of standards, I'm talking about technical standards. We also, for agents as well, we have more standards that we're going to have to look at in the future regarding personal information, privacy, frameworks around deployment. And as you probably know, a lot of the European Commission and a lot of other organizations globally are starting to think about that, as well as not-for-profits and other think tanks as well, and academic institutions like my own. But so definition is one that I'm really, we're all kind of struggling with, because, when we say AI agents, it could mean different things to different people depending on regulation or depending on where they're sitting, quite frankly. So from a technical point of view, JTC 21 within ISO has set up a group for defining standards, and they've started to produce documents, and they're also talking a lot about agents as well within that. So the thing is, as AI progresses and as it becomes standardized, there's a few other things that'll need to happen with respect to agents as well. One is defining the processes, test methodology, which will be particularly important for engagement, metrics, reference points, and risk analysis. But I think the most important thing as we go forward with this, from a standards point of view and from a discussion point of view for all the different companies and the different organizations coming up with agents, is going to be how there's going to be compatibility and interoperability. Without that, the different ideas and the different potential market solutions to things, whether it's on a travel site or whether it's food shopping or perhaps even medication, won't be able to take place. And standards provide stability as well, provide a baseline and provide a foundation for everything going on as this continues to grow. And I just wanted to highlight from a UK perspective, where I'm from and where I work, there's a great organization called the AI Standards Hub that just put on a AI Standards Summit. And there's videos from that summit as well that are really good to dip into and gives you an idea of what the technical standards are, what people are talking about with GDPR and et cetera, and all of that. So from that point of view, I think there needs to be some stability and some sort of common framework or multiple common frameworks from which we can jump off of. And I think that's what's happening from that point of view. So I'm going to stop there. We can talk more about it.
Sure. Yeah, no, great. Thanks, Dominic. And, sort of we're setting the stage here. We can certainly come back to some of the topics that were raised. Luciana, I'm going to turn to you next since we're still waiting on Fernando to join us. Why don't you go ahead and, talk about some of the research you've done and some of the challenges you've discovered along the way.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation, Jim. I'm happy to be here. I hope next time I can join you guys there in person. I haven't been to the IGF in person myself. And I think the slides need to go on. Yeah, that's right. So those are my slides. In fact, I wanted to share something, and it's my first reference there, that is very related to one question that was just posted in the chat by Tinuat from Nigeria on human workforce. So I wanted to share this recent study by the Social and Language Technology Lab at Stanford. I wish we had a similar study for Latin America and also for Africa, Tinuat. It surveyed 1,500 US workers from 100 occupations, asking if they want automation with AI agents. The results showed that workers do want automation, but in a large proportion, not the kind of automation that AI agents currently offer. In this survey, almost half of the tasks offered by the AI agents that were described there, that are offered now by the AI agents, were seen by workers as non-desired for automation, including, for instance, agenda setting. While other tasks, for example, scheduling meeting times through a natural language conversation, have a high potential for automation, according to the AI researchers that were also involved in the survey to see whether the tasks were actually feasible. But these tasks receive little investment. So who is responsible for this misalignment between human needs and AI agents' current capabilities? Well, not only companies deploying agents, as many of them rely on a few large language models that work well for some tasks and not for others behind AI agents. It's also important to notice that this misalignment carries an environmental burden. Every hour and every task performed by a misaligned agent, and I'm not talking about training that agent, contributes to unnecessary energy consumption and carbon footprint that is not making most humans' lives better, according to this survey. So there's another aspect. Once we decide on a task, if that task is aligned with the needs of the humans, how do we choose one AI agent over another, right? So there are also ethical considerations there. And in order to choose between one AI agent over another for a particular task, usually we use metrics. So for measuring for instance, the energy consumption, and also metrics for deciding which agents make less errors. Some of the most used metrics in AI are not transparent. For example, F1 and accuracy, they treat all kinds of errors in the same way. Let me give you a concrete example. Suppose a government is using an AI agent to decide which families receive an energy subsidy. A false positive here means giving a subsidy to someone, to a family, that may not need it. So it's an inefficiency. But a false negative, denying a subsidy to a family that depends on it, can mean kids going without power to study or to store food, for instance. So F1 and accuracy, that these metrics that are very common in machine learning, do not distinguish between these two types of error. In her paper that we see here, Luciana Ferrar argues that these metrics obscure these risks. She argues that to select good models, researcher can just hand off this risk consideration of different kinds of errors to policy implementers. These decisions, these metrics have to be built into model selection from the start, better metrics that consider different kinds of errors. This means involving domain experts in early stages of AI design to decide what kind of errors have different kinds of risks and costs, and not in the late stages as is done in human oversight. So I will leave the last reference there for later on to get the discussion going.
Okay, thank you very much. We are still waiting on Fernando to join us, so I guess as we previewed for you, we want to make this interactive. So what I'm going to do is I'm sort of going to get the discussion going. I've got a couple of questions for our panelists, but so everybody knows rules of engagement here in the room. There are microphones on either side. For our remote participants, if you have a question, please type it into the chat. I know that's not ideal, but from a technological standpoint, that is the most efficient way to make it happen, and I will read your question into the chat. So let me, we touched on, let me just bring up some thoughts here. So obviously safeguards is something I think everybody in this room is concerned about. You hear the potential horror stories of AI agents running amok. What are some of the safeguards that we do need to protect, privacy, safety, and autonomy in a world full of AI agents? So I'm sure you've given this a lot of thought.
Quite a lot of thought. This has been core to our mission at Google from the beginning, from our earliest days, and I think agents in some ways take some of these risks and some of these questions to a new level, particularly the degree of autonomy with which they can operate. But really the trade-off between autonomy and human oversight, I think, is crucial to this. And it really is at the center of our approach, which focuses on putting the user in control. You think about what are some of the unique challenges that arise with agents, because in many ways, I want to emphasize, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. AI agents are AI systems that reflect a lot of the long-standing challenges and concerns associated with AI in general. But they do have certain unique attributes that raise new challenges. One is the fact that AI agents are often made exponentially more effective by greater access to sensitive data. You think, for example, of an agent that, to Luciana's example earlier, wants to schedule meetings in your calendar. It needs access to your calendar, perhaps to your email, in order to understand your schedule and what can be moved around, where there is availability for a meeting to be scheduled. So making sure that the user is able to express granular preferences and control what data is accessible to their agents in order to perform the tasks that they want that agent to perform. Also making sure that they're able to control what data is retained by the agent. They're able to delete old sessions. These are all core capabilities that we build into our agents and that we think are going to be crucial going forward. Another form of user control is making sure that we're passing back from the agent to the user to make important decisions, particularly ones that have significant impacts or that are difficult to reverse. To give you a concrete example, let's say that you ask your agent to plan your dream vacation. The agent can autonomously go look at possible vacations on the web, identify ones that map to your particular travel preferences. Maybe you're a beach person, maybe you're a mountain person, and plan a great vacation. But we want that agent to pass back to the user to confirm before it goes ahead and makes any bookings, spends any money, makes commitments on behalf of you and your family. So that user control, I think, is really central. Another big concern with agents is that they're susceptible to what's called prompt injection. So the idea that third parties might try to manipulate the agent and get the agent to take actions that are not in the interests of the user. Here, part of it is making sure that we have robust security built into our systems, and that that the models themselves are trained to identify third-party attacks and also to prioritize the user's needs and instructions over those submitted by a third party. The second piece is making sure that you have appropriate policies in place and that you have appropriate tools to enforce those policies, so that if the agent does behave in ways that are unexpected or unintended, that you're able to intervene and prevent the agent from taking actions that could be harmful to the user. And then the other piece is making sure that there's transparency that enables accountability to the user. You want to make sure that the user is able to understand what actions the agent is taking on their behalf, and is able to intervene as needed to make sure that they remain aligned with that user's interest. The last thing I'll say is a big part of this, as Dominique alluded to earlier, is going to be about how we build the protocols and standards for the agentic web. And I think it's really important to remember that agents interact with data and systems in a very different way than humans. But right now, we're building agents that are using user interfaces and online capabilities that were designed to interact with people. I think that's going to change as more and more agents are taking more actions on behalf of users on the web. And there's a very real possibility that we'll end up with what is in many ways a new layer of the internet. We're already starting to see this develop. Google developed the agent-to-agent protocol to help agents to interact with each other in a vendor-agnostic and application-agnostic way. Anthropic developed the model context protocol to help agents understand and interact with data in safer and more intuitive ways. This is going to continue to be an area of active research, and I think it's going to be really important. And then finally, there's the actual governance and regulation layer, which is going to be critical. A lot of this is already stuff that we're putting in place. You look at landmark legislation like the EU AI Act, and as I said earlier, it addresses many of the common concerns about artificial intelligence that apply to agents as well. But we will need to continue to look at this space going forward and figure out where additional legislation that's specific to agents is needed, and make sure that we're putting good policies in place.
Thanks, Will. Luciana, you want to add to this?
Sure. So apart from privacy that we already mentioned, I also wanted to talk about biases. And here I wanted to share a real case that happened, that also I had the reference before in the slides on a paper that we wrote with my team. This is a real case that I want to share with you, but like this, there are many similar ones because we did a teacher training on AI agents for 500 teachers in secondary school in Argentina from all different subjects at high school. And so for this, we created a methodology that is called HESEIA, that is an evaluation methodology, a critical evaluation methodology for agents constructed with language models. And so at the particular public school in Argentina, high school teachers developed an agent for career guidance for students for choosing a degree to pursue at the university, using a well-known LLM API that we provided an interface for them to use it more easily. And they discovered that this agent tended to recommend degrees that usually have lower tuition fees. So this was something recurrent. So it was recommending careers with lower tuition fees to low-income students. However, in Argentina, for the moment, most universities do not charge tuition fees. And so this kind of, so it didn't make sense for the agent to recommend careers that do not charge, that do have a lower tuition fee. So this emergent bias can have long-lasting effects on the students' lives. And like this one, we found many other cases. This is one of the points I wanted to raise. And the other one is a question more to the audience, right? To ask ourselves. So when we have AI agents to automate a task, who is going to gain the profits from that task being automated? So I think that's a very important discussion when we are talking about automation. Thank you.
Great, thanks. And, thanks for posing a question to the audience. And I'm looking at the audience because the microphones do not have anybody standing at them. So now's your chance. Dominique, you want to add something to this? And I'll just let everybody know that Jayanta is dialing in now. So
Fantastic. That's great. Good. I just wanted to sort of touch upon things which both Will and Luciana mentioned. One is security, and one is actually just ensuring a secure environment, a secure development environment, from a technical point of view, a secure deployment environment. Iteration, testing, and all of that is something that's going to be really, really key because the attack surface is going to be quite large. And I think it'll be ever more important to make sure that there's shared practices even among different companies about how that they're doing that to the best that they could share that. I think the other thing that I just wanted to mention that's off the back of Will's point about creating another layer of the internet, so to speak. I think this AI and agents in particular are going to challenge all of us to think about education differently. So to think about how we are educating our kids, or how the schools or any kind of environment that we're in changes how they describe how to use the internet, or how to get online, or how to interact with different things. So there's definitely an education piece. That's a long-term thing, but it's something that's going to really be needed in light of all of this, in light of this huge step change as well in the economy.
Okay, great. Thanks, Dominique. So we do have Jayanta Fernando, who has joined us, I believe, from Kuala Lumpur. It's kind of tough coming in 20 minutes into a discussion, but let me catch you up real briefly. I think a lot of what we touched on is talking about sort of misalignment, some of the unpredictable behavior, some of the challenges that come with AI agents, as well as, some of the benefits that come. But Jayanta, you were a former government official in Sri Lanka. Now you're working with governments all over the world, talking about these issues. You're on the AI task force there in Sri Lanka. So maybe from a, government perspective, if you can, how are they thinking about looking at AI agents, and what role do they want to play in the rollout of those?
Thank you, Jim. And can you guys hear me?
We can, yes.
Oh, thanks. I'm sorry to come in late, just in the middle of cybercrime and electronic evidence program ongoing here with the government authorities here in Malaysia. Just to home directly to your question, I just want to emphasize that at a very early stage of adoption of AI-based systems in private sector, as well as some parts of government, in some of our countries, mostly the strategy is centered around doing building blocks or basic AI governance kind of tools. So the way I see regulatory intervention in my country, in Sri Lanka, evolving is with the objective of developing a regulatory roadmap. The AI task force has set up a legal working group entrusted with that task, it's expected that we deliver the roadmap or a draft for public comment and stakeholder feedback in or around mid-July. So we are at the very tail end of constructing something. But the objectives are to promote responsible innovation through flexible governance tools and address critical AI risks, including discrimination, transparency, privacy, safety, cybersecurity, as well as accountability. And then to look at existing legal frameworks to see how best AI-related challenges or facilitation is provided. If the existing legal frameworks are a barrier, there is an expected timeline that's currently being developed to modify, amend, or develop new legal frameworks. And in doing new potential legal frameworks, the AI legal working group of the task force has identified both the risk-based hard law approaches to soft law approaches. And the tendency in our part of the world is to look at soft law primarily as an approach being what is perhaps best for Sri Lanka, given the landscape evolution that is expected. You mentioned about AI agents, exact scope and perimeter and the boundary and the risk challenges associated with AI agents are being examined, right? And there is not much visibility on how the challenges may evolve before we even think of potential legal regulatory steps. In Sri Lanka, we don't want legal regulatory steps to be an impediment towards innovation. And finally, I would like to simply say that the roadmap is focused on fostering public trust in AI system and to align with international development of standards. And in that context, a lot of expectation is in relation to global harmonization. We know that Japan has adopted a very proactive, forward-thinking legal regulatory regime that seems to be more aligned to our thinking. However, the policymakers back home are even considering looking at NIST and other standard-setting bodies for guidance in this area. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So one of the things I picked up from what he was saying was, the consultations that governments are undertaking. Will, I'm sure you participated in plenty of those, both in the U.S. and around the world, and I'm sure Luciana as well and Dominique. I mean, what are some of the common themes that you're seeing as you're talking to governments about, what questions do they have, what resources do they need, and what role can both the private sector, civil society, and the technical community play to educate policymakers about the best way to approach this? Dominic, you want to maybe jump?
Go ahead. Will, sorry.
Sure. What are governments asking about agents? Frankly, the biggest question that I get about agents from government officials right now is, what are agents? And I think that, as I mentioned earlier, that is, the hot topic of the day. I also get a lot of questions about, what really is different about agents and what do we need to think about differently, which I addressed earlier. But I do think that another kind of family of questions that we're getting from governments is, what are the implications of this agentic evolution of AI systems for the broader ecosystem? You think about, for example, the implications for the broad world of cybersecurity outside of AI cybersecurity or agentic cybersecurity itself. One of the defining paradigms of modern cybersecurity practices is bots are bad. That's generally the assumption, and we prevent a lot of malicious activity online by blocking identifiable bot activity. As agents, which act like bots online and look like bots to a lot of cybersecurity systems, how do we actually enable them to do their jobs while also making sure that bad bots continue to be prevented from causing harm? This is going to be a much broader question. There's a lot of really interesting academic research actually going on right now to understand how we differentiate between bad bot behavior online and good agent behavior online. How do we actually identify the two? But then there's also a lot of work being done on how we authenticate agents, how they identify themselves to third parties, developing those standards that Dominique talked about earlier. The other piece that I'll flag that we are hearing a lot from governments is they want to understand what is the vision for agents, what is the positive goal, what is it that we're trying to accomplish by rolling out this technology, and how does it actually work under the hood. And I am really encouraged to hear this. I think it's a lesson learned from the last few years of AI policymaking that really having a robust understanding of the technology and how it works and what the problem is we're trying to solve for users is important to making good policy. So to me, it's really encouraging to see governments increasingly starting from that place and building that into their thinking about regulation.
Great, thanks. I see Luciana's got her hand raised.
Yes, I just wanted to add that since I'm also a computer science teacher, a professor at the university, one question I get a lot is how is this going to impact software engineering, right? Because AI agents are being used more and more by software developers to automate a large part of the software development chain. So I think this is a very important discussion also to have because it has the potential to impact in a strong way the workforce of software engineering, also for those countries that have workers, have a lot of workers in this domain. So I think that's another topic that I wanted to raise.
And I thank you for raising that as the parent of a rising third-year computer science major, because it's definitely front and center in our house. And these are the discussions you need to have with a 20-year-old these days. It's really important to focus on. So, Dominique?
One of the things that I want to point out also is that so the regulatory frameworks are still emerging, but they're also very different, right? So in the UK, there's a push and the AI strategy there more generally is to focus on adoption and use and innovation, whereas the AI Act in Europe has really specific requirements in terms of risk analysis, practices that are prohibited, and in particular, one of the prohibitive practices that's named in the AI Act in the EU is behavior manipulation. So that's going to be something that's going to actually be quite challenging. And how to align that, for example, with what's going on in North and South America, what's going on in other countries, other regions. We've heard from what's going on in Asia Pacific more generally. So I think there's going to still have to be some alignment and agreement about how agents are going to act internationally. And again, best practices and frameworks are going to be key here, but just keep in mind that different countries and different regions are probably going to react differently to agents, also from a cultural point of view as well. So that's something I wanted to bring up.
Great. Nico, thank you for being the first to come up with that.
Thank you so much.
You would introduce yourself and fire away.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, well, so thank you to our fantastic panelists. My name is Nico Caballero. I'm the GAC chair at ICANN, Governmental Advisory Committee. And I have a question for the experts here regarding the influence or the effect that nowadays, sorry, I'm having trouble with my headphones. You can hear me,
We
right?
can hear you. Maybe
All right.
take it off and it's a little easier.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay,
just
that's
to-
better. So my question is regarding, regarding machine learning. Let's say machine learning in general. We have supervised machine learning, unsupervised, and then reinforced. Supervised being, classification, for example. The way banks and credit cards and everything use classification systems. clustering for unsupervised learning, and then we have reinforced learning, LLMs, and ChatGPT and DeepSeek and Gemini and many others. So my specific question is how are agents, having, or what kind of influence do agents have as regarding supervised and unsupervised learning? For example, classification, just to give an example, or clustering as regarding unsupervised learning. Sorry if I think it's a very simple question. I'm not overly complicating things, but if you can give us, some what the latest, news you have in that regard, I would greatly appreciate it.
So it's an interesting question. I don't think that, as far as I'm aware, agents are not used in overseeing training, at least that I've seen up to this point. Generally, agents are trained, are derived from the largest and most complex models, because those models are able to conduct the multi-step reasoning and take more complex actions, as I mentioned earlier. So that means that they're often trained using unsupervised learning. That being said, there's a lot more that goes into training those models than just the really large pre-training runs that people think of. And often there is additional supervised training and fine-tuning that's done on those models. They're often retrained using user feedback or based on actual user journeys, sometimes with what people tend to think of as reinforcement learning, which is more real-time, but often in batches and using curated data sets. And so I think that you see a mix of all of these things. An additional piece is when we use agents, we're also using a variety of other systems, many of which are ML-based around those systems. For example, classifiers, in order to oversee and manage agent behavior and enforce our policies. And so all of these systems are working together. All these methods are working together to make sure that, as we've been talking about, agents remain aligned with the user's goals and kind of with broader societal values, and that they're doing what the user needs.
So that's really interesting, because you have to think of it as a real complex system, right? It's not, so as humans, we're used to thinking of things as very linear or very sort of one-to-one, but I think it's actually more complex than that. So it's really interesting to hear from you about that.
Luciana?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, well, all machine learning algorithms and agents and supervised learning, everything is developed also by people, right? And that these people are the programmers, the machine learning engineers, and so on. And these people are using AI agents, as I mentioned before, to help them program. So in a way, it's influencing also what they do. And something that is important in this, if these people that are doing this job are pressure in their work to maybe hand in their work before they have actually time to read it, that's also a risk, right? Because there could be code inside what they are building that is not that maybe they don't even understand, right? So we don't know what the implications of that are going to be when that software gets deployed.
Great, thank you. I notice we have a question to the left. Just introduce yourself and let us know.
Great, thank you. So my name is Richard Wingfield. I work for a sustainability consultancy called BSR in the tech and human rights team. I wanted to ask a question which touches upon a couple of points that Dominique and Will made, which I think is around how agentic AI will change the way we use the internet and technology. And I thought the examples you gave at the start, Will, of the use cases, things like managing your budget, doing your shopping, buying a car, you sort of said we can do less of that and do more important things. And actually, I think you could reframe those as saying things like financial management, thinking about your children's health and well-being, being able to critically assess options and make a decision are all quite important things that we do as humans. And so I guess my question primarily for Will is, if we're thinking about the way that agentic AI may affect our ability as humans to analyze, make decisions, think, that kind of thing. And policy is not going to be able to catch up with that for a while. How are companies like Google thinking about that as part of their responsible AI development? And maybe to extend the question to Luciana and Dominique, what do you think should be the technical or policy interventions that might be needed to complement companies' own considerations on that aspect of responsible AI?
That is a great question. And first off, I'll say I completely agree that, thinking about your family's finances, about your children's health is absolutely critical. I mean, like I said, I'm a parent. I think about this stuff all the time. I think the idea here is not that you don't think about those things, but that I can spend more time thinking about, for example, the kinds of foods that I want my child to be exposed to early in their life, understanding, the many competing opinions about exposure to allergens, for example, and all of those things. I can spend my time really understanding those issues and making informed decisions about what I want my child to eat, as opposed to spending my time writing out the actual grocery list itself. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't want to be making sure that the groceries that my hypothetical future agent is buying for the family and making sure that they actually reflect my values and my preferences. But it's just a lot of that kind of very menial, basic day-to-day load that is embedded in those activities is stuff that I think can be taken off of our plates. The human doesn't go away. The human needs to be at the center of these processes, but it allows us to be a little bit more strategic and hopefully take some of the pure kind of mental weight that we feel out of the day. I will say that for us at Google, making sure that the user has the opportunity to express their preferences, not just in the user journey, but in how they set up their agents and how they set up their accounts is really important. That's why in your Google account, you have the ability to determine what types of data are available to Google AI systems and to Google agents that you're interacting with, which ones that you want to choose to use, the types of use cases that you want to choose. So really empowering the user and putting them in the driver's seat is the most important piece of this for us.
Just also I'm just going to make a quick point, and that is, thanks, Richard. Always great questions, and we could probably talk about this for hours, to be honest. But
we have 10 minutes left.
Yeah, 10 minutes and 25 seconds. I think there is going to have to be a bigger piece in terms of education for policymakers as well and government. They don't even know how the internet runs. Now, I'm not saying that about Nico, because clearly, no, but on a more serious level, I think that there needs to be more engagement and interaction, because these systems, as well as really eloquently said, are so complex, right? And I think that's going to happen. There's just going to have to be more relationship building in that area with all stakeholders, not just, the private sector engineering, but civil society has a part to play with that too. And I think that's going to be key in order to develop the right kind of interventions and see what happens.
Okay. Luciana, did you want to come in?
I think it's Lab who has the hand up.
Okay.
Was before me. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It keeps coming and disappearing, so I'm not sure. There was a hand raised and now it's gone. But there is a sort of related. There is a question in here, and I'm going to paraphrase it. Essentially, when dealing with things like healthcare, really sensitive personal information needs to be super secure. How secure are these AI agents that are dealing in this particular space? And can they be trusted not to compromise your personal information in one way or another?
I mean, that's a great question. And that's something, it's not just about the technical aspect and about the risks and about the sort of all of the potential DDoS attacks and the attack surface and everything like that. It's also about ensuring, and the AI Act in Europe does this. They have a risk analysis and a framework and risk reporting that actually has to describe the risk that is available or potential risk that's available, but also any issues, any breaches, any attacks. And I'm afraid we'll probably see quite a few of them. But so far, I think with the baked-in security of internet protocols and other evolving security, security developments on different layers of the internet so far that that things are moving in the right direction. But I guarantee there is going to be some issues.
Luciana?
Well, I completely agree there that we will see some issues. So as an NLP researcher, we know that large language models, when they use private information for training, they can repeat that information at any point, even if there is no particular attack to extract that information. So there is no way to ensure from the technological point of view that that information is not disclosed to someone that it shouldn't be disclosed to, unless that information is not used for training. The problem is that since there's a lack of enough data for training systems, especially in domains that are sensitive like healthcare, is tempting, let's say, to use information that is not properly anonymized for training purpose. And the problem is that if the information is in natural language, it's in fact impossible to completely anonymize it because we can identify names, we can identify addresses, personal identification numbers, but there can be private information that is not expressed in any of these formats or that combined with other information makes a person identifiable. So this is, from a technical point of view, this is a problem that at the moment has no solution.
Jim, can I come in on that, Jim?
Sure, please.
Yeah. So Jim, I think on that particular area that other panelists touched on, I just want to give some perspective. While I tend to agree with both of them, my view is that generally most of the data protection laws tend to cover the use of personal data and processing them in an agentic AI agent environment may constitute or trigger perhaps the various regulatory regimes governing or regulating processing personal data. And in the context of maybe health related information, which would definitely come within the category of special categories of personal data. High degree of protection is required in most countries. Same is true when it comes to Sri Lanka. For example, we have a personal data protection law founded on the OECD privacy guidelines, as well as based on some of the principles contained in GDPR, but the enforcement regime is not based on GDPR. Enforcement framework is primarily based on some of the APAC privacy framework principles with options to do course corrections before moving towards a regulatory fining kind of regime. So I think both in terms of regulatory intervention, one has to be careful not to stifle innovation. While we need agent AI growth, that should not be hindered by regulatory frameworks such as privacy laws. Privacy laws should provide the platform for course correction to address the grievances of those individuals whose rights are affected, and more so in the area of personal data that might relate to health-related information. So the clear boundaries and striking the right balance is an approach that we are looking at, and that's where I believe a kind of a light touch regulatory, a soft law approach with some kind of policy guidance in this realm may be more appropriate, but we still do not have a standardized international response in this area. Thank you.
Thank you. And this always happens. We have 3 minutes and 20 seconds left, and we have two people at the microphone. So what I'm going to ask you to do is both ask your question, We'll try and answer it, but they have told me they will cut us off at 12:30. So I'm not sure who was first, but go ahead and we'll try and answer them real quick in a lightning round and finish up as well.
Thanks. My name is Carl Fredrik Haugland. I'm here on behalf of myself as a member of the tech community. We'll touch on the topic of keeping the human in the loop on impactful decisions made by the agents. And with the introduction of agentic AI, the role and responsibilities of the user and service providers change. And as companies start offering agentic AI solutions, how do you think the dynamic between the user and the service provider will change? And how do we establish a conscious and informed approach to the responsibilities and accountability in this new dynamic?
Well, then we'll take a question to the left.
Thank you. Anne McCormick, EY, Global Head of Public Policy. I'm interested in this context of policy not just being regulation. One of the key things are market forces, but market forces by themselves are slow. We're seeing in the space of AI something which is demand by board members as well as actually developers, which is third-party verification, third-party assessments, third-party assurance, third-party audits to be made public and meaningful. I think this is something to look at as a tool, a voluntary tool, but a tool with specific parameters to be applied to agentic. It supports adoption, it supports trust, and it forces disclosure and learning throughout the ecosystem. We're about to publish something on this next week online, looking at what's happening across the world. Happy to share, look it up on EY's website. But these are existing tools that are flexible. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So 15 seconds per panelist. Respond and wrap up and give us a final parting thought.
Great. So I'll go just to say that like the kite marking or assurance assessment has a long history in telecoms and physical devices. So there's a lot to, as you were saying, there's a lot to base like a sort of kite mark or an assurance mark on. So that's great, actually, that we have like a history of that. I don't know. I think I'm going to go off the grid.
Or pass.
Or pass.
Will?
I completely agree. There is a long history there, and I do think that building assurance and validation frameworks and having third parties helping us to build trust in these AI systems and agentic systems is going to be critically important. Coming up with good metrics and evals to support that is a continuing area of research, and I think we're really investing in that on the Google side, and are really excited to build partnerships to do more of that. To the other question, I would just say, as I mentioned before, being really thoughtful about passbacks and how we loop the user back in ways that are useful and beneficial to the user is really the critical piece. But also, as we learn over time from user feedback what they like and don't like, and what does enable them to trust the system, that's going to allow us to continue to improve.
Luciana, final comment.
Yes, so I completely agree with this last question. So third-party assessment is crucial. And I leave the audience with a question. So how can we credibly work towards a future where this third party is made up by the most affected, the workers, the teachers, the students? These are the most affected that we are seeing in Latin America. And when they are meaningful co-designers of the AI agents that affect them, and that are involved also in analyzing the environmental impacts with metrics that they can understand, and not just use them as raw data providers. So that's my question for you. And finally, if you are there in person, please reach out to Beatriz Busaniche that can tell you more about our work in Fundación Vía Libre, that is there in the room.
And Janta, I'm sorry, but our wonderful, polite Norwegian tech support team is giving me that look. So we're unfortunately going to have to wrap up. But Will and Dominique are still going to be here. Any questions? I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you afterwards. Thanks for Luciana and Janta joining us remotely, and thanks for everybody for participating in person.
Thank you. Bye-bye.